Hey everybody, welcome back to On Stage, Off Stage. I'm your host, George Sapio, and this is episode number 152, April of 2022. Our guest this month is Debbie Lamedman. And Debbie is, well, many things, all of them really busy. Among her pursuits, she's a playwright, a teaching artist, and an editor. But hey, not just any old editor. Debbie is the editor for 3 of Smith and Kraus's upcoming books. The best 10-minute plays of 2021, the best women's monologues of 2021, and the best men's monologues of 2021. For all of you book editors out there, well, you know the level of commitment that this entails. As a playwright, Debbie's written many different works, including plays and monologues specifically geared for young people, because hey, you know, the classics are great and everybody should know them, but theater is best when it reflects the actor's personal experiences. There was so much going on with Debbie, I honestly had no clue where to start.
Okay, so that's a great place to start because I have always been in the theater, always.
Yeah.
It's all I ever wanted to do. I started as a teen as a dancer and was enthralled with musical theater. And then when I went to school, all I wanted to do was dance, and I really had dreams of being on Broadway until I had a wonderful dance teacher who told me I would never make it because of my body type. I was too short, I was too stocky, and I wasn't going to do it. Yeah, one of those. So I wound up going to the American.
Encouraging people in this business.
I know. I can't imagine, because now I have been a teacher, and I can't imagine ever saying that.
I know, right? It's just, how many lives can you destroy with your callousness?
Right. So, it made me even more self-conscious than I was. But it was just, I loved it so much. I took to it like a duck to water, and I loved it. And I didn't stop. I didn't stop taking classes, but I stopped going to auditions and things like that.
Right.
I moved over to acting and went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in LA. And then I thought, when I was done, I thought, I'm an actress. And so spent most of my 20s waitressing and calling myself an actress, but not really doing much of anything else.
Yeah, the majority of the business does that. So,
Yeah.
Well.
And, I recently read an article about the actress Lori Petty, if you know her.
Yeah, I'm familiar with her.
She was in Point Break and Tank Girl, and
right.
She started League of Her Own. She's currently in Station 11 on HBO.
Okay.
And we're the same age. She and I are the same age. And we came up at the same time. And in the article, it said it was an unfortunate time for actresses because they wanted the cookie cutters. They didn't want women who looked a little bit different, who were a little quirky in their behavior, and they didn't fit the mold. And so, I got a lot of hard knocks coming up at that time. So reevaluating it as I moved into my 30s, I had never finished my degree. I went back to school, got my bachelor's degree, was acting in the undergrad because the teachers were delighted that I was older and had some chops.
Yeah.
And then I decided to go to grad school with the prompting of a mentor, because I thought, I'm not going to do this as a career. I'm going to teach, and I should have an MFA. Right. And so I went to graduate school, and I went to Brandeis, still acting, and left Brandeis and moved down to New York City, and I started getting booked. And I, as an actor, and no one was more surprised than I was. I really just couldn't believe it. But the stage has always been kinder to offbeat sort of people than film or television. Not anymore, but back then, this is the 90s.
Yeah.
So I was acting. I actually have a couple years of tax returns that said that was my occupation. Living the dream, making my living. I did a revival off Broadway of Rhinoceros. We got terrible reviews in Ionesco, right?
Yeah.
Who cares? And then I felt like, okay, this is happening. I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. And that's really all I ever wanted. I didn't care about fame. I just wanted to work.
Sure.
And I didn't work always in New York. I went outside of New York and got booked in regional theaters and stuff. And that was fine with me. And then it just stopped. It just stopped. It's where I had to get the job as the waitress and do that whole thing. And I thought, after a while, I just thought, I will never forget the day. No cell phone then. I was at a payphone up at Lincoln Center by the Barnes and Noble, and it was pouring rain. And I called my mother, who was living in California at the time, and I said, I can't do this anymore. And she said, so come to California, put your stuff in storage, come to California, breathe some ocean air, and we'll figure it out. And I went back to California, and I never went back to New York.
Yeah.
I started teaching, and I started teaching teenagers. And these teenagers were doing monologues that were written for 40-year-olds. So I'm watching a 14-year-old girl do a monologue about how she's divorced and has 3 kids. And I said, you're 14 years old. How do you know anything about this?
Right,
She said,
exactly.
I can't find anything. So I said, well, tell me about your life. And she told me, about sneaking cigarettes, sneaking outside her window, and her parents had no idea, but she didn't go anywhere. She just hung out in her backyard with her friends. She wasn't really a bad girl. And I wrote a monologue about that. And I gave it to her. And she said, Debbie, this is my life. And I said, yeah, I know. I wrote it for you. And then a little bell went off, and I started writing just standalone pieces for my students. And then I thought, there's got to be something to this. And I wrote a letter to Smith and Kraus, and I said, I'm right. They have these young actor series books that I noticed, and they have this whole teen series for monologues and scenes and plays. And so that's how I started. That's how I got published first. Was they accepted my monologue book for teens, and I didn't think of myself as a playwright. I just thought, okay, I can dash off a monologue here or there.
Yeah, well,
no big deal.
What? You are, yeah.
But, well, it took me a long time to wrap my head around it.
Yeah.
Because for my thesis in grad school, I wrote a one-woman show. Again, a mentor prompting me. Because I hated how I got cast in grad school. And it was always one girl, the same woman, who got all the leads. It's just so true. I'm not an ingenue. Sue me.
Yeah, I know. I've heard that.
Make some better plays.
So many times. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So I was kind of complaining about how I was getting cast to one of my professors, and she said, "Then cast yourself in your own show. Write your own show." And I said, "Well, I'm not a writer." And she said, you have to find an umbrella. Find an umbrella of what it is, that you would want to talk about. What has been a running theme throughout your life. I didn't think twice. I immediately said food. And she said, okay, because I had, as a teenager, dancing, and then going up to be rejected time and time again for auditions and not looking the way they wanted me to look, I developed eating disorders. I tried to do everything I could to get skinny.
Sure.
And unfortunately, this is not, it's still common today. And this is years ago, right? So so many young girls are going through what I went through so many years ago. And it's changed. Yeah. Maybe it's a little bit better because the representation in film and TV has gotten better. But anyway, I wrote a show called PHAT, P-H-A-T, because the acronym P-H-A-T stands for Pretty Hot and Tempting. And so I wanted to take the word and flip it and give it a positive connotation.
Sure.
And it was me playing 15 different characters. And I did that at grad school. And of course, I was on my home turf. So standing O's, and I didn't think anything would ever come out of this show. But then I did it again in New York, and I did it again in New York. And I think and it kept changing. And I did it so many times that my body changed every time I did the show. It's like I'm 40 pounds up, I'm 20 pounds down. And, I was rewriting all the time.
Yeah.
And then I put it on the shelf and didn't try to pursue it. When I left New York and I went back to LA, I just left it alone. I did not want to do that show in LA. I just did not, because I didn't have a suntan and I wasn't a size 0, so I didn't want to do the show in LA.
Well, I mean, when people say write your own show, I mean, because, and as a playwright, it's like, my question is, how do I get produced? And the answer is you produce yourself. But to write a show for yourself and then give yourself how many characters that you had to differentiate between?
15. It was all sort of different variation, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing, George. I didn't know what I was doing. It was total beginner's mind.
Yeah.
So I had never written anything from start to finish. Really, I didn't know. Like I said, this was even before I was writing monologues for the kids. This was graduate school. I had no idea what I was doing. And I would have one of my professors would stop in for rehearsal. She wasn't directing it, as was student directed. And but she would come in and give me some notes and kind of guide me to more of an arc kind of a thing. It was really sort of this episodic journey through my life, because I played myself at various ages.
Yeah.
And then I also played the inner critic inside my head. His character's name is Mr. Horrible. And Mr. Horrible and the chubby little girl meet when the chubby little girl is maybe, let's say 6 or 7 years old, and she's playing jump rope with her friends, and so they meet then. So I played myself as a chubby little girl, as Mr. Horrible, as a teenager who couldn't fit into the jeans that everybody else was wearing.
Yeah.
I played a counselor, a fat, not a fat camp, but like almost like a Overeater Anonymous group leader, just
Sure, yeah.
so happy and fun, and you're going to be fine, and food is love. And right. It was a total spoof. So who else did I play? I played my mother.
I'm not sure I want to go there, but
I know I wasn't sure either. Well, she didn't ever see the show. She read it, but she didn't see it.
Yeah.
And so there was a bunch of different characters. So then after it was on the shelf for a while, I have a friend who's a professor, a theater professor at the University of Central Florida in Orlando. And he said, did you ever think about making this an ensemble piece for women? Because the theater, especially educational theater, is lacking roles, like that for women, especially colleges. And I thought, well, I never thought about doing that. But then I took the piece, and that's what I did. And FAT, P-H-A-T, FAT, became Fat Girls. And Fat Girls has had quite a journey. Colleges love it. It's been produced a lot.
It sounds like the right kind of material exactly for that range of actors. Because you were talking before about the 14-year-old girl is talking about being divorced and having 3 kids.
Right.
And one of the things that always got me about university theater curriculums was you've got 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds playing 40-year-olds in 19th century Russia because Chekhov has to be done, and people with no life experience are playing Glass Menagerie. And I know they're classics, but could we be a little bit more out of touch with who our acting pool is? I mean,
they do the same stuff over and over and over again. And
get some new stuff in there, people. Get some stuff that's written for people who have sensibilities that can be understood. These kids are in there, and they think acting is pretending you're somebody completely different, and that's not it.
Right. Well, that was the conundrum for me in grad school, because in in class, they would give me like, do you realize what a strong and powerful woman you are? So they would giving me scenes where I would play Clytemnestra or Lady Macbeth, and trying to bring out my strength and show the anger and all this stuff. But they weren't casting me like that. They would never have cast me that way.
Yeah.
So that was, this just knocking heads with the faculty. And the reason I chose to do so many characters was I wanted to show you have to remember, I wrote this to showcase my acting
the range,
not to say I'm a writer.
Give me parts I want, so I'm going to write my own.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So now Fat is Fat Girls, and I have had the pleasure of directing it a couple of times, and I directed it twice in California, and then after I moved up to Portland, I was asked by a local university to come on board and direct it, and so I had directed it 2 high school productions of it, and then I directed a university. That's actually, I think I sent you a YouTube link. It was a little documentary on making Fat Girls at a Pacific University. Yes. So that was great, because it was great to work with older women. Then, they got it a little bit more than but the high school kids were great too, because they all have gone through that. Directing a cast of girls with all these, eating disorders. There's a toilet center stage, I mean, how more blatant can you get?
Yeah, you can put it in big crayon letters, but I don't think you need to do that. Touching back to, taking on such a huge project, it seems like you're not a stranger to taking on big, huge projects to do. And I want to get into how you and I kind of met a little bit, because I know you primarily because you are the editor of, now let me go through all of this, okay? Because this is, I think, in 1 year, Best 10-Minute Plays of 2022, Best Men's Monologues of 2022, Best Women's Monologues, Laughter is the Best Medicine, 45 5-minute plays, all for Smith and Kraus. You are the editor, and if I'm correct, it means you do the selections, you pick, you oversee all the details, like who played it in the original, lineup, and what dates was it. And having done a couple of books myself as an editor, I sit here in total awe. I mean, I am pretty much, just salaaming here in front of you. How did you manage to survive that?
Well,
that's incredible.
Lawrence Harbison held that title for many, 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 many years.
Yeah.
And Larry, you look back on that whole series, they've been doing the series for 30 years.
Yeah, I love Larry. He's one of my favorite people in the universe.
He's wonderful. He's a wonderful guy. And I don't have any dirt to dish, nor would I if I did.
No, I would not want dirt on Larry. No, let's not dirty Larry.
Larry left Smith and Kraus, and then there was a couple of years where it was just weird. They ran it as a contest or something. I think they wanted to continue the anthology series. Mm-hmm. In 2020, when the pandemic hit, I pitched to Eric Kraus. I said, "What about doing an anthology on plays about coronavirus, because everything's on Zoom now. So the whole book would be Zoom plays and the theme would be coronavirus." At first he didn't bite. And then he said, "Well, can we keep them short? Can we, instead of 10 minutes, can we do 5?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "And can we make it funny? Because I think we're all just a little bit over the traumatic COVID-19 pandemic." And this was early.
This pandemic to end now.
I know. Well, this was early still. This was maybe May of 2020 when I pitched it. He said, "You know what, Debbie? If you want to do this on spec, go ahead. And if it's good, I'll publish it. But I can't, I'm not going to commission you to do this. If you want to take this idea and run with it, I will look at it. I said, okay. I had nothing else to do. I was not teaching anymore. Everything was shut down.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, everybody knows what the situation was.
My whole life has been Zoom for the past 2 years, especially theater.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think I got the idea because the 24-hour plays were doing monologue series.
Sure, yeah.
And I don't remember exactly how I got the idea, but that's how I got the idea. So I'm a newbie at this, right? I've never really done this before, to reach out to people beyond my own circle of playwright people. So I put it up on the playwriting boards for submissions, and I didn't get a lot. I mean, in respect to what I got later on for the best of, I think I probably got over 100, or just about 100 submissions for this. And they are 5-minute plays, and they're funny. And at first I was only going to take 25, and then I found some more, and then I found some more. And so then I wanted to, Smith and Kraus loves to do the whole number thing, 45 5-minute plays.
Sure, yeah.
So I did 45 plays, including one of my own. And I did it fast because I was smart in this, but I had a very small submission window. The plays came in, the submissions closed. I went through my 100 submissions, short plays, easy to read, and I picked out the best ones. And for these particular pieces, it didn't matter if they had it was, they can be unproduced, didn't matter, because the whole world is upside down.
Yeah.
So it didn't have the stipulations that the anthology series has.
Sure, yeah.
And I think I did it really fast, like in 2 months. I finished it and I sent it to Eric, and he's like, "This is wonderful. Let's do it. Let's print this." And so that is how that came up. And then I think, because he was so impressed with, now Eric and I have had a relationship going back to early 2001 is when we first met for the monologue book, teen monologue book. And I had already have with them, I don't even know anymore, of the monologue book. I have a scene book. I have 20 10-minute plays. These are all for teenagers.
Yeah. And
then I started editing, having teens, writing for teens, monologue book. So I have all of those. Plus, Smith and Kraus has published an actor edition of Fat Girls. So I have a good relationship with Smith and Kraus. So he approached me and he said, "I need an editor for the annuals, and would you want to take that on?" And I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I mean, I suppose I did, but I didn't really realize what it was going to be. How did I survive that? Kicking and screaming. It was...
Well, you obviously did survive it, and yeah, kudos to you. But boy, that is something, because, I've been seeing these books for as long as I can remember, the best plays of 1964, 1973, 1981. And, I look through these things, and part of me, because I've always been a theater geek, and part of me comes down to, so who picks these? And what are they looking for? What's their criteria? And now I know. It's you. Well, I mean, this year.
Well, now it's me. Yeah. Because I did the 2021s, and I said to my husband, "I'm not sure that I want to do it next year." We had a little. How do I say this nicely? We had a little head bump with the typesetter and the graphic designer, and there was a lot of back and forth of mistakes not being corrected, and it was just an arduous. The thing was, it opened up a world for me that I had not allowed myself to be a part of before. And I say allowed myself because when I finally recognized that I was a playwright, when I was writing beyond Fat Girls, and I've written a lot more since then. I was thinking, it's a solitary job and I don't know any other playwrights, and I would like to. When I moved to Portland, I got involved in a couple of different playwriting groups, but to be honest, it really wasn't for me for whatever reason.
The chemistry has to be right, and the people have to
it has to be a good fit,
and the kind of support
right
has to be right, and
I didn't find that to be true. So when I started the 2021 series, I had taken myself off of Facebook. It was just getting to me. I went back on Facebook. I can
understand that.
And now I'm reading. So the window for that first series, the 2021 series, with combining the 10-minute plays and the women and men's monologues, there was over 1,000. It must have been 1,052 submissions. Now, I opened the window in August and ended it in December, and I was reading all along because I didn't have anything else to do, and I really wasn't writing my own stuff. And what it did, then I would find someone who who is this person? This play is amazing. Yeah. I'd go on NPX and I'd read more about them, and then I went on Facebook and I started friending, and then I got involved in some of the Facebook groups, which can be a little,
yes,
combative.
A little tricky to navigate, shall we?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I started, as silly as it might sound, I started making friends with people that, I've never met, but I was falling in love with their work and getting to know them. And then once I started making offers to people and then reaching out a little bit more, and suddenly I found myself, and I guess it's Facebook and NPX community, I found myself like, I introduced myself as, I am a playwright. Yes, I am a playwright first, an editor second. And how do I pick? I pick the plays. If you catch my interest in the 3 lines, I can be sold. And again, just like the structure, if it's different, if it's unique, I tend to really like. It doesn't take a rocket science to figure out that I'm going to go for what's different, what stands out is maybe quirky, not the cliched stuff. I got so many park bench plays, George.
I've been doing this podcast for 10 years, and I've been soliciting plays pretty much every single year on different themes. So I know exactly what you're going through. I'm in the middle of one on pets, and I will never do pets again. Because, going back to what you and I were speaking of earlier, a lot of these plays are about the ending of the pet owner or human relationship. And I was kind of stunned at how many I got. But over the years, I've found, while trying to go through these plays, I kind of put them into groups of, yes, I've seen this before, and, ooh, this is new. Let's see what else is here. And the criteria is constantly shifting. And I can't say this is what I'm looking for, but because sometimes I don't even know what I'm looking for. And it's hard when you've got so many plays sitting in front of you to give your best judgment to. So, yeah.
And these last 2 years, our criteria did have to shift because of the pandemic. So we couldn't take, a lot of these plays were supposed to be produced and never were, or they were produced on Zoom, or they were readings. But if you go back and look at prior volumes, none of them were done as readings. They all had to be produced.
Right.
And so that lifted a little bit. I think if I do next year's, and I'm still smack dab in the middle of, I'm in the proofreading stage right now, which is excruciating. It's just so tedious. And I need absolute and total quiet. And the the 10-minute play is a beast. It's 50 plays. And so that's the big fat one. And if you interrupt me, if Zelda, my dog, comes up to me looking at me and going, I'll immediately lose my spot. So it's taking me a little bit of time considering what's going on. But
let me ask you this, because you just brought this up, and I don't want to let this go.
Okay.
Like I said, it used to be you had to have a live, on your feet, in front of an audience production to be eligible for publication. With many of the theaters closing, and with a lot of them still closed over the past 2 years, I'm not talking about the ones you're working on now, but I'm talking if you are going to do that, or in your opinion, for 2023 or 24, will Zoom productions count? And if so, what kind of Zoom productions?
That's a great question, because I've been thinking about that as I'm going through these things. First of all, the COVID play is getting very tired already. And I really, I did the COVID book, The Laughter is the Best Medicine book, specifically just COVID. Yeah. A lot of the plays in the 2021 dealt with the virus and the pandemic. And if they were good and they did have a different spin on it, just like we said, they're doing the same thing, but they're doing it in a way I've never seen before, I would bite. But this year, not as many. And what I'm noticing is the playwrights, because things opened up a little bit in the middle, before Delta came along, we had a little bit of opening, and some people actually got live performances in somewhere in 2021. Yeah. So there was less coronavirus content, but what playwrights will do, and I've done it myself, because a lot of times you'll look at a submission and they'll say, if we're planning on doing this outside summer of 23, but we don't know. So you write in a little playwright note, right? If this is done on stage, you can have, character A on one side of the stage and character B on the other side of the stage. Because we don't know what we're doing. We playwrights, like, are we writing for Zoom? Are we writing for the stage?
This is
what's going on?
Brand new territory. All of a sudden, everything we know about theater has been taken away. Literally taken away from us. We have no more rehearsal rooms. We have no more live audiences.
Right.
The only thing we've got is a bunch of scribbly words on a page and a bunch of actors going, what do I do now?
Right. Exactly. And I don't know that we'll ever completely get away from Zoom. We're still very much into this pandemic, though many people will disagree with me. But my niece, my 26-year-old niece, just came down with it. It's not gone.
Yeah.
I still wear my mask.
I know people who just came down with it. I've known people we've lost like close to 24 people because of this.
I know.
And I'm still dealing with people going, I don't know anybody who's got it.
Right. So, I'm not a huge fan of it, but I think that just in a very short period of time, people have become really great with the whole green screen thing and making it work. And so I have to have a talk with Eric about it. I want to kind of edge away from getting any more Zoom plays, but I don't think that it can be a door that can be absolutely closed, because I think there's going to be a lot of really good material that might be shut out and more plays are actually being produced on Zoom, not as readings. They are being produced fully. Yeah. I had a show last weekend. I don't even remember. It was a short 5-minute piece, and it was on Zoom, but they did a really good job with it. And both actresses are memorized and all that. So I can't definitively answer your question.
Yeah, no, I wasn't really expecting a solid gold answer. I was just throwing this up there to get your perspective, because you're a lot closer to they who make the decisions than...
What I might do if I do it again, I know it's always like, oh no,
Right.
Is I think I might just say, because I've seen other submission opportunities say no, no coronavirus plays. And I almost want to add no Alzheimer parent child plays. Yeah, I have gotten so many of those too.
Sure, yeah.
And I'm actually one of the statistics. You know, my mom passed away from Alzheimer's, so it's very tempting to write a play about that. But there's so many. I mean, this is what's happening in our world right now, and I get it. I get that this is what is happening in a playwright's life, and they want to write about it.
Yeah.
But find a different spin on it.
We're a lot freer to write about things like that now and actually call them by their real names.
Sure.
Whereas before it was always couched in something and it was referred to and it never quite got to the heart of the matter. It was more of a peripheral kind of exploration of what's going on. So yeah, there
right. They didn't name it.
Right.
They didn't. I remember seeing. I wish I could remember the name of the play. It was a long time. It was back in the 90s, and Day Trip, something like that. And the mother had Alzheimer's. I saw it in LA with like one of my favorite actresses, an LA actress, Angie Bird, and she played a mom with Alzheimer's, but they never said the word. Right. I don't even remember them saying dementia, and of course, I don't remember who the playwright was. But it was haunting. And now it's become, I hate to say it, but it's become so common that we're desensitized to it a little bit.
It's become the norm instead of being. But then again, on the other hand, it's also a hell of a lot scarier than it used to be because now everybody's talking about it and everybody's seeing it one way or the other. And the more time goes on, the older we get, the more we start to wonder.
That's right.
Because no one knows where the hell this thing is going to strike next. And
that's right.
It's the scariest monster I can think of at this particular point.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and that's, you mentioned On the Porch.
Yeah. Oh, that is such a lovely play. I love that play.
That's just me dealing with, and so you had asked before, like, what do I want to talk about? And this is, how can you ever say that you want to write about something when you haven't hit that milestone in your own life?
Yeah.
But, you know, I was sitting on my porch watching the squirrels and just feeling very angry at the world and how they treat older people. And now I'm one of them. You know, I am in this demographic now. Yeah. And my big thing was just nobody tells you. And I'll just be really, really blunt. They will educate a young girl about menstruation, but they do not educate very well on menopause. They'll tell you how to start, but they don't tell you how to finish.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe what was happening to me and my body. It was flipping me out. And I felt like if I would talk to people about it, it was coming out sounding as like an excuse. If I would talk to my doctor about it, my 30-something-year-old doctor,
sure.
She was not very empathetic.
Yeah.
And so I got into this very angry state about it. And it's not anything new. But again, I feel like we're now living in a world where we can start talking about that.
Yeah.
And if we're not, I would like to, because I really feel like I want, a 20-something-year-old woman is not going to listen to me when I tell her what happens when you're 60 years old. But I want to put it out there, you know.
It should be there for anybody who wants to educate themselves on it. You know, I mean...
And it's funny. I think it's funny. So if humor makes anything palatable, so,
yeah,
you know, if I can do that and keep the humor alive about it, and it's not just this rant of this, bitter old lady.
Well,
I'm going to try to be
entertaining, you know? And I mean, that's one of the things. You can put anything across. And I don't mean entertaining like song and dance, slipping on a banana peel kind of thing.
Right.
it has to keep the interest. It has to play to your sense of wonder and suspense of disbelief.
Right.
But that's, I mean, that can come in so many different
Sure.
forms. And, who knows? We may just get, over the next 5 years, a raft of menopause plays just because people heard you on the show and they're like, that was a good idea.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And I never watched The Golden Girls, but I do know, I recently found out with the passing of Betty White, I found out that the Golden Girls, when that show was on, they were all in their 50s.
Yeah.
They were so young, but they addressed these issues. Wasn't it a Norman
Mm-hmm.
Lear
Yeah, no,
show?
yeah.
Didn't he like always like push the envelope and stuff?
They were bold.
So
Yeah.
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 So I started writing. I wrote this monologue called "Nurturing the Crone" again for myself
Mm-hmm.
to come to terms with, to try, because I started getting really interested in the the archetype of the crone and the hag, and where she appears in mythology, and
Sure,
she's
yeah.
just old and wise, and it's very fascinating, and it's all tied up with the mythology. And there's the maiden. It's the maiden, and then the mother, and then the crone.
Right.
And so I have to, reading the different definitions of each, I'm definitely hitting crone. So I wrote this monologue called "Nurturing the Crone," and then it's in my head now. I'm thinking, what a cool idea it could be a solo show. It'd be a hell of a tour de force for an actor to play all three, right? To play the crone, the mother, and the maiden. And so it's 3 monologues that I have right now. It's actually up on NPX, and it's just sitting there right now. But, it's just an idea. I wanted to get it down. And I just think it would be kind of cool if it ever comes to fruition.
Cool. Yeah, I'd love to have a look at that. In fact, I will have a look at that as soon as I can finish my pets thing here, which is taking up all my time. When I was doing research on you, I came across an article, an interview, where you start talking about possibly my favoriteest ever subject in the whole world, which is play workshopping. And to quote you, workshops are amazing because now it becomes collaborative between the playwright, director, and actor. I love this part, me too. I love seeing what an actor and director can bring to the work. And for me, this has always been one of the best parts of playwriting, is sitting in the back, keeping my mouth shut, watching a bunch of trusted professional colleagues rip the hell out of my play, take out my best joke, which happens every single time.
Oh, no.
Oh, God, yeah. It's just that day I sat in the cafe and I was like, I am the cleverest person in the world. I'm writing this down. This is hilarious. And I get to the second week and they're like, no, this has got to go.
It's not working.
But to watch the play mature, develop, come to fruition, however you choose to describe this, for me, is a magical, magical experience. I mean, I love it. How did you get into this? How did you find this? And what's been your experience with it? And I've got one more question
with
about this after that. Yeah. Or development anyway.
Well, I'm going to talk about one in particular. I have a play called Triangle Logic that I wrote. And once again, my good friend from University of Central Florida, he read it, loved it, and he had 3 grad students who were looking for their thesis project. And when he gave them the script, they said they wanted to do this play, which was incredibly flattering. They actually flew me out for a week of rehearsal, and then and then I was there for the run of the show. And first of all, it's a little bit of out of body, because by the time it got into rehearsal, I thought, and they would have a question, a very, very specific question about their character. I thought, I don't remember writing that. And that seems to happen a lot when we get to that stage of the process. But I don't remember writing it. And I'm not going to get all woo-woo on you and say, oh, the muse takes over and I just start writing. But it also happened to me when I was an actor, like, all your lines, and then the minute the show is over and the run of the show is over, you don't remember a thing about the experience. But
or you get to the end of the show and you realize you don't remember a second of what you just did for the past 2 hours.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know what happens. Well, you're being channeled. We're vessels. I know that. What was so amazing was that it got to the point where it seemed like the actors, and these are grad school actors, and they're working their little tushies off, right, to do all the good acting things that they are being taught to do. So I actually, in lieu of just working with incredible professionals, it was an amazing experience to work with these 3 actors. And they would ask me questions about these characters that I found myself thinking, them better than I do at this point.
Mm-hmm.
You're living in them. They said lines that I never in a million years had in my head. They would say the line that I wrote,
right,
but they said it in such a way that I and put a spin on it that I just went, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. I never thought of that. A simple stage direction from the director who says, while you're sitting there waiting, you're waiting for him to show up to the cafe. You're nervous. Why don't you just start ripping the napkin? I can't even tell you how much that added. I mean, you're smiling right now because you know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
That you can't possibly do in your own head by yourself. Maybe if we were novelists, we could, but we don't. And so the things that are added, it's very frightening to me to take the newborn baby and hand it over and say, okay, you take care of the baby now. But that's why we do theater. And, of course, they can ruin it too. They can really, really ruin it. And I've had that experience as well, where I felt like I was getting suggestions and suddenly I felt like I was writing in a box in a completely, I'm not even going to mention the name of the play, but in a different play.
Yeah, sure.
The suggestions that were being made, I wholeheartedly disagreed with. They wanted me to create an entirely new character to accommodate the telling of the story, and I really, really disagreed with it. But I have a dramaturg and a director who are much more aggressive than I am.
Mm-hmm.
And so I bent and said, okay. And I have never been good with that decision on that particular play.
Yeah.
So it can go either way, but mostly I have to say, I've been very lucky in the workshopping process where it only added to make the play better.
That's what's happened to me most of the time that I've been in workshopping, and which is why I'm such a devotee of it. And there have been those moments where an actor, director, dramaturg will turn around to me and ask me a question that is so incorrect, which means they're not getting it. I know they're not getting it.
Right.
I know why they're not getting it, which means somehow they either didn't do their homework or they're just having a bad day or something. And I've developed this wonderful response, which is, you know what, I'm going to look at that. I'm going to think about that. Let's drop that right now. Okay? And you let me think about this for a couple of days, and I will come back with an answer for you. And that usually deflects just about all the stuff I can't think about while I'm in the session.
Sure.
Because you're in a session. You are basically, once the spotlight is on you and they're asking you questions, you got actors looking at you, waiting for a brilliant answer because you're the playwright. And that's what's going on in my head. That there's a baby drooling into his diapers.
Right, because you're put on the spot.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And again, it's that thing where they're asking you a question about something that you wrote seemingly months ago, maybe even longer. And what were you thinking about when you wrote that line? I don't know. What does this line mean?
Sex?
These kinds of questions.
Yeah.
Well, then you turn it around, like you said, deflect. what does it mean to you? Because I don't really remember. I mean, they'll sometimes put you up on a pedestal because they think that have all the answers to the questions of this play. And the fact is the questions have only just begun once you get into a workshop of it, when you bring all these other people into it.
Yeah.
And, my questions were answered. A lot of my stuff was answered. I really favor writing ambiguity. And I love it when it's done well. I'm not sure that I do it well. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But, sometimes if I leave it I leave it way too ambiguous and they're trying to find the thread. And, the ambiguity is merely me trying to get the audience to lean forward in their seats and go, let me figure this out. But if it's really a struggle, then you have to go back in.
You should make the audience a little more, not too hard.
Right.
Just enough to feel like they've been engaged. Because if you make them work too hard, they're going to get lost and they shut off almost right away. It's a very, very...
Well, they'll just stop working.
We've been at this for pretty much 50 minutes. This has been so...
Really? It hasn't felt like it.
I know. It feels like we just got started. We could do this for another 3 hours.
Wow.
But
you're so easy to talk to.
Well, thank you so much. You are too.
Thank you.
This has been so good. Thank you so much for stopping by and talking about your work and giving us insight into how these magical books of wonder, get birthed. So, for our audience, how can we find out more about you? It's as a writer, as a theater personality. Where can we go in the ether to get more Debbie?
My website's pretty up to date for the most part. I try to keep it up to date. So my website is my name, DebbieLamedman.com. I'm also on New Play Exchange, Debbie Lamedman on New Play Exchange. And I have a good amount of work on, but you can't get in there if you're not a member.
Well, you have to be a member.
Yeah. So members, click on me and recommend my work. And also I have stuff up on YouTube. If you go up on YouTube, there's some stuff. There's some things there's a channel called Hear Me Out Monologues, hosted by Roland Tech. And I have a couple monologues up there.
Nice.
And this is the second year he's done this monologue competition called Hear Me Out. And then, if you win some big bucks. Right. I haven't won either time, but he's asked me to be on this program he started called Someone Speaking, and it's all monologues. And then he puts them up on YouTube. So you can find me there.
Nice. Great. Cool. Well, thank you so much, and good luck getting through the rest of these books. And,
and maybe next year.
Hey kids, thanks for listening to On Stage, Off Stage. On Stage, Off Stage is produced monthly, and all of our shows can be found at onstageoffstage.org and also on iTunes and Spotify. If you enjoy what we do, please recommend us to your friends. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at OnOffStage. And if you are a theater artist with an upcoming project of interest or know of someone in the theater who'd make some seriously good chat, by all means, send us a note at info@onstageoffstage.org. I'm George Sapio. Thank you once again for listening. And please, stay safe, be careful, not only for yourself, but for those with whom we all share this rock. And as always, happy theatering to all of you.